The time has finally come. Pooh Shiesty has been officially sentenced to prison after pleading guilty in a court case. We need to talk about this, so let's get straight into it. As reported from the courtroom today at the time of this recording, rapper Pooh Shiesty is no longer facing life in prison for using a firearm in a robbery in Miami, Florida. Shiesty and his lawyers got a deal made with the courtroom that helps Pooh Shiesty avoid life in prison. Pooh Shiesty pled guilty to a federal firearm charge. This now results in him facing 8 years in prison and also helps avoid a long-lasting trial which could have lasted years. Sadly, Pooh Shiesty, he still has one more case to battle, but still, being able to get out of this with 8 years in prison when he was looking at facing life is amazing. Now in the courtroom, it gave a detailed description on what happened the day that Pooh Shiesty used a firearm in an armed robbery. It states that Pooh Shiesty met two individuals inside of a parking lot. Shiesty arrives driving a bright green McLaren sports car. When Shiesty and his boy arrived, on film, they were seen hopping out of their cars and meeting the two individuals. They were originally supposed to buy high-end sneakers as well as narcotics at this meetup that was all created on Instagram DMs. Now at the time, Shiesty was seen wearing a mask over his face. This made it very hard for law enforcement to figure out who it was until Pooh Shiesty practically self-snitched on himself. Now everything was going normal in the meetup. Shiesty was even showing these two individuals around his McLaren, and when the transaction was about to go down, one of the men ended up describing Shiesty saying something along the lines of, "You know what, I'm good." And then Shiesty is seen pulling a firearm out of his waistband and he starts using it towards the two men. He ended up hitting one in the hip and the other one in the backside. This is when Shiesty grabbed the goods off of the trunk of the vehicle, hopped back into his McLaren. While trying to rush and grab the sneakers and narcotics, a Louis Vuitton bag fell out of his McLaren's butterfly door. In this Louis Vuitton bag that fell onto the parking lot floor, there was $40,912 in cash. After this incident, Shiesty then headed to the airport, rented out a private jet, and flew right out of there before law enforcement even had the chance of arresting him. Now the evidence files that were shown in the courtroom is the best part. Now in the court case, this Instagram photo of Pooh Shiesty was used against him. Now in this photo, you see Pooh Shiesty standing right beside the bright green McLaren sports car. He ended up flexing this photo on Instagram the same day he did an armed robbery in it. The next piece of evidence is a Louis Vuitton bag. The same bag that I mentioned earlier was being used against Shiesty in court, as after the robbery went down, the feds downloaded several photos from his official Instagram account, zoomed in on the photos, and realized that the serial numbers on the bills on his Instagram photos matches with the cash found inside of the Louis Vuitton bag. So there is no denying that it was Pooh Shiesty who did this armed robbery, as he was also caught on surveillance footage, as there was a literal police station right beside the parking lot he did the armed robbery in. Pooh Shiesty is a very lucky man in this court case, with only getting 8 years in prison, as when you take a look at the Florida 10-20 life rule, it states that you'll be put into prison for 10 years if you pull out a firearm without a license. You'll be put into prison for 20 years if you pull a firearm out and you use it towards someone without defending yourself. And then you'll be sentenced to 25 years to life in prison if you pull out a firearm and you use it towards someone and that person is then affected by it. Shiesty and his lawyers were able to work out a deal with the judge, granting him only 8 years in prison, where he could have very well have had life in prison. This was so then he can skip a trial, which is probably what is in the best interest for the courtroom as well. But sadly, this isn't the only court case that Shiesty will be facing. In the second court case that starts very soon, at the King of Diamonds Club, Memphis rapper Pooh Shiesty was performing for a crowd. During his performance, Shiesty was seen having $40,000 cash sitting in his skinny jeans pockets. Now, according to the official arrest warrant shown in court, Pooh Shiesty was performing at this club when a group of individuals in the crowd started grabbing the stack of cash that was inside of his back pocket while Shiesty was performing. Eventually, all of that cash fell out of his pocket and then fell onto the club's floor. This is when everybody in the crowd swarmed the stack of cash that was on the floor and immediately ran out of the building. Shiesty then hopped onto the club's floor trying to get his own cash, but sadly, it was too late. This is when Shiesty was seen storming out of the club after the individuals, and while he was leaving the club, somebody that was sitting in the back row was recording, and he just so happened to catch on film Shiesty pulling a firearm out of his waistband. A few moments after, all you hear is a firearm being used outside of the club. Witnesses claim that Shiesty got into an argument with a security guard as the security didn't stop all of those people that grabbed his money, and allegedly that's when Shiesty used a firearm towards the security guard. But this is where a new massive update officially comes out, where the security guard that Shiesty used a firearm against no longer wants to press charges against the Memphis rapper. The security guard officially takes back all statements that he gave law enforcement at the scene. He claims that he doesn't remember if he saw Shiesty aim and use a firearm towards him. This is allegedly due to the paramedics that arrived to the scene, giving the security guard a certain type of medicine to help deal with the pain he was facing. This now makes him no longer want to press charges, as he's not 100% sure if it was Shiesty who did this to him. Now, at Pooh Shiesty's next bail hearing, this information will become present to the judge. Now, Shiesty, he still has a very high chance of facing life in prison just for this second case alone. Now, he did get very lucky in the first one with only having to face 8 years in prison, but you have to remember, just because the security guard is going to drop the charges against Shiesty, it still doesn't mean that he's just off the hook for doing this. Law enforcement is still going to want to punish him for what he did, but he might get less of a sentence because of it. Now, Shiesty and Gucci Mane actually ended up hiring many lawyers that were used in a lot of rapper-related court cases a few months ago. In case you're unaware, Shiesty is signed to Gucci Mane's 1017 label, so he has so much money behind him to help him get released from prison. But I am very curious to know, how much money do you guys think that security guard was paid to drop the charges against Shiesty? Because I find it very hard to believe that he just forgot what happened and is now suffering random memory loss out of nowhere. Anyways guys, this has been District Trending, and I'm ending the video here. I'm out. Peace.